this video, you're going to see the future.
Hello, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand. Timcast, thanks for the raid. Crowder and your Mug Club, thanks for the raid, baby. All of you all, before we leave you today, we'll be setting you up with a quartering. You might be watching us in a whole variety of places. For all we know, you're spellbound in a cyber war right now because, you know, a lot of them platforms, they're part of a system that runs deep. I didn't realize how deep this system runs, but whether you're a conspiracy theorist right out there on the edge lands with your Ikes and your Jones, or maybe you're more modern, more new wave, more in the Ian Carroll territory, or maybe you're like just an old school actual Christian, you might be considering stuff like, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in their heavenly realms. Let me know what you think about that in the comments and chat. Are we in a spiritual war? Why is every single deportation either a cause for celebration or mass lamentation? What are the moral principles that we cleave to? Can we even say that a man is a man or a woman is a woman anymore? What does language mean? Isn't it always been amorphous? What can we rely on? What is the only authority that we can trust? What's going on in my country, the UK? I didn't misquote Ephesians. I directly quote Ephesians, XXXXXFT Smurf. Get into that Rumble chat, by the way. People are speaking pretty freely over there. Or you can join my beloved friends over on Locals. They're our long-standing community of, I call them the beloveds. I call them absolute darlings. I've got to tell you, when you see someone like Love in Action or Sensitive Hearts or Jude Syke or Thomas Beard, you got to love them. You got to love them. But then there's Zeta Ridiculous and Ardy Pascal in the Rumble chat. Having a go at my ex-wife, God love her. Man, these are interesting times, aren't they? I realised that this is what I've got in Scripture today. It's our Lord chatting away in Luke. And he says, you know, before Noah's Ark was floating, folks was going about their business, growing food, chatting. Before Lot left Sodom, people were just cracking on, probably getting their nails done. People were kissing and hugging. People were probably, well, obviously we know what was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. People are up to no bloody good. But then the Lord says, hey, look, I've told you with words, I've told you with signs. Now I'm going to have to tell you the fire and the brimstone and nuclear reactions. So what I'm telling you lot is, get ready, because this is not a time that will be defined by cultural issues. As always, the spiritual truth, the stillness that is available within you, the presence of God, the living water, will be heard. But that's just what I think. What does Kanye say about it? Kanye, this is the best Hitler image yet. Got the furrowed cheekbones chiseled. Like, Kanye is leaning into it. When I recognize that I'm a person who's under attack, under assault, once beloved by the culture and now defiled and attacked by the culture, I think, man, I should lean into this stuff. What would be my equivalent of doing what Ye is doing there? They call Ye a racist. He goes full Hitler. I've been called some pretty dark stuff. How do you lean into things like that? Let's have a look at what's going on Prison Planet UK. This is a little bit of a throwback, but this just shows you how crazy the UK is right now.
Let go of me. This is false. This is harassment. He's touched my leg. He touched my winky.
He touched my winky.
He's just touched my. He just touched my dick. It's
just touched my dick.
Just touched my dick. It's on the side. I got a 9-incher. He's
on the side. I got a 9-incher.
I got a 9-incher. He's just touched my cock. Oi! Stop sexually harassing me. Let go
not
of
while you're
my
being
arm.
searched, no, because you've moved
Mate,
around.
get out my fucking trousers.
All right. What's in there?
My leg. What else is in there? My dick. Do you want my dick to hang out?
There you go. Britain, crazy days indeed. It's getting crazier by the second. Russell, stop. Well, you actually say stop the religious stuff, please. No, listen to me. Listen to me. There is a deep truth trying to emerge among us and between us right now. Religion is but one way to describe it. Sublime and deep truths. If you want to access a kind of psychedelic quantum Christ outside of time, right now, breath by breath, beyond and beneath light, collapsing from wave into particle as we meet one another in relationship, if that's the Christ that you like, take that Christ. The scripture is clear. Somehow between vibration, spirit, light and manifestation, there is a holy creation. We have to find a way of abiding and existing in this world and not making gods of stimulation, whether that stimulation is apparently negative or apparently positive. Everything is about God, because God created everything, and yet there is an evil one. L Diddy 857, there is an evil one, and we must awaken. It's pretty clear to see which side people are on these days. In my country, the UK, multiculturalism continues, and I actually believe that everyone has the right to their own religious or non-religious path, and that we should revere and certainly respect one another's religious faith. This is an interesting post from Rupert Lowe. Why is the official Prime Minister account, pumping this woke guff out on an almost daily basis? I really don't care about the Bengali New Year, and I'm certain the vast majority of Brits agree with me. Give it a rest and focus on what matters. Certainly, I would say that celebrating the cultures and the religions of a variety of people, particularly if you have a country that has populations drawn from around the world, because, you know, Britain was pretty imperialistic, colonialist, enlisted people from around the world to fight in British wars, and as a result of that, we have a different kind of racial makeup in our country. How do you manage that lovingly while still respecting and honouring the fact that Britain, while secular, is a Christian culture and a Christian nation built upon Christian principles? Let me know how you manage that tension. There's a lot of tension, and we're going to have to start acknowledging it if we're going to manage it. But before we leap face first into a variety of complex issues, I want to welcome any of you from Bongino Army. A lot of you like old Rob Lowe. Tyler Veach, Russell dyes his eyebrows. No, I'm telling you, man, I don't. Is it because the rest of this, there's this greyness here. I'm getting Tulsi Gabbard up the sides. I'm getting some General Zod stuff around here. I don't know, mate. I'm seeing a lot of people with moustaches these days. I'm thinking of getting one. Do you think so? Yeah. Shave it right up. Shave it right off. I don't know, man. Then I feel like I would have to black that up. I said black the moustache up. We're not going into those dark territories of blacking up the entire face. I'm not Justin Trudeau. Let's have a look at while I face jail, my ex-wife faces space. Let's have a look at what some of the conspiracy theories that are abounding.
Okay, now I want you to watch the hatch door open from the inside. The lady runs over there real quick, says, no, shuts the door back, tries to stand in front of it.
There he goes. No, he don't think no one's been to space ever, does he, that fella? He's convinced of the matter. What I consider to be pretty significant and important, in fact, while many people wrestle with what borders and boundaries mean, what it means to lead, what it means to have a nation, is this curious new class of leaders that are emerging, in particular in Latin America. Bukele, the president of El Salvador, has of course been visiting and discussing the curious deportation of an illegal immigrant who it seems may have had criminal ties in the past to prominent and fearsome Latin American gangs. On the left, I can tell you people are pretty outraged with one Democrat congressperson going to advocate for the return of this El Salvadorian. Let me know what you think about that in the chat. What I know as a person that's visited El Salvador is they're making some serious moves in that country, running the place on Bitcoin. Now, whilst I get sort of a bit angsty about industrialized incarceration, whoever's doing it, I recognise if you're going to have law and order and if you're going to have a nation, if you get yourself a mandate, you're going to be able to act on it and create these vast jails. Bukele certainly is outspoken when it comes to the kind of insights into global economics that many of you online, you in the Rumble chat, like Cyrus Klops and M. Wilkins and End Christianity, Judaism and Islam, like to discuss even now. Check him talking about the true nature of global finance, the position of power of the dollar, and those that use taxation to exploit. Let me know what you think about this, particularly as it's coming up. Well, we're right in tax time, aren't we?
The real problem is not the high taxes themselves, but the fact they are not even really funding the government. So who's financing the government? Government is financed by treasury bonds. And who buys the treasury bonds? Mostly the Fed. And how does the Fed buy them? By printing money. But what backing does the Fed have for that money being printed? The treasury bonds themselves. So basically, You finance the government by printing money out of thin air. Someone could ask, well, so if the government can print unlimited amounts of money, why would they need taxes? The answer is simple, but it's very shocking. The real problem is that you pay high taxes only to uphold the illusion that you are funding the government, which you are not. The government is funded by money printing, paper backed with paper, a bubble that will inevitably burst.
A conceptual world held together by faith. That's what I mean, mate, when I back your ideas, rebuke indeed your points about religion and religiosity, because we live in a conceptual world where continually we make faith-based decisions. Indeed, of course, the idea of a nation is itself a choice. It's an origin story, an origin myth, a flag, a set of agreements. And if you don't have concordance and consensus, what you have is a shared illusion. And a repeated illusion is a delusion. I was taught it thusly. If you wake up in the night and you see your dressing gown belt on the floor and you think, it's a snake, that's an illusion. You look and you go, oh no, it's not a snake. Why would there be a snake here in my bedroom? Not like there are serpents all around us in this reptilian nightmare. No, it's the dressing gown belt. But if you continually and consistently see that dressing gown belt as a snake, that's a delusion. We have to awaken immediately from the delusion of democracy, from the delusion of consensus, from the delusion of reliable authorities. We have to awaken to the deep religious truths that we've ever been told, that we fight not against flesh and blood, but against dark authorities, against spiritual powers that are corrupted, that the evil one has infiltrated. So where do you stop? Do you stop by just analysing corruption in the tax system, in global corporatism, in politics, in lobbying? Or do you ever pause to think that the reason that there are all these peculiar and somewhat terrifying... Sarah Logan, friend of the show, where she talks about federal government perverts paid a group to secretly text children about sex. You know, there's weird stuff going on, to put it colloquially and somewhat frankly. My country, the United Kingdom, is hardly exempt from that. Now, whether you're watching us on X or YouTube, please make your way to Rumble and consider getting Rumble Premium and participating in Rumble's daily lineup with a whole host of free speech advocates and practitioners. Unless you want the United States of America to end up like the UK, a practice penitentiary, where we saw one poor man terrified for his winky just a moment ago. Actually, that's a story from a little while ago, actually. But things have been heading this way in the UK for a little while, with people increasingly questioning the media, which is generally owned by conglomerations and can't be trusted and has strong alliances with the political class. People asking questions even about the police, the judiciary. People are in despair because of the refusal to have an inquiry into the rape grooming gangs. But for a long time, we've known there is deep and intransigent corruption. In the UK now, it extends to the mess that's being made of the agricultural industry, the way that farmers are being exploited, annoyed, irritated and undermined. But hypocrisy out of a leader like Keir Starmer is his bread and butter. It's his lingua franca. He speaks pure hypocrisy, whether it's the ridiculousness of celebrating and revering minority cultures while ignoring and denigrating the cultures upon which the nation is founded. You can do both, you know. You can respect other people's cultures while continuing to abide by and obey the culture upon which the nation is founded, unless, of course, that nation is founded on evil principles that have been completely submerged necessarily, so that entire domestic populations can be exploited and endlessly subjugated. Here's Starmer now, in real time, lying to the people of Liverpool. And it's particularly relevant now, of course, because Liverpool Football Club continue to grieve and mourn the 98 people that ultimately died as a result of the Hillsborough disaster, where the Sun newspaper lied and said the people were responsible for their own deaths as a result of their conduct and even robbed corpses. Now, this was just one of the ways that we learned that the Sun newspaper cannot be trusted and are liars. Of course, that newspaper group had to shut down one of their titles when their reporters were caught hacking into the phone of a dead girl. Do you not know this story because you're American? A girl had been kidnapped and killed, and their reporters were hacking into the phones. These newspapers have hacked my phones before. It's standard practice to hack phones. You know that the media are spying on you. You know the media have interesting relationships with law enforcement and the government. You know you can't trust them, don't you? It's absolutely plain. I would like to offer my condolences commiserations and solidarity to the people of Liverpool, both red and blue, Everton and Liverpool, as we commemorate the deaths of those people that died at Hillsborough. And to remember that we have to never ever forget the corruption and hypocrisy that meant that their deaths were not properly investigated or necessarily revered. Here's Keir Starmer lying again in Liverpool to the people of Liverpool.
This city has been wounded by the media. The Sun in this city, a hurt for this city. And I certainly won't be giving any interviews to the Sun during the course of this campaign.
I'm very happy to work with the Sun, to write for the Sun, to do interviews with the Sun.
Can't trust him on this issue, neither can you trust him on the rhetoric around agriculture.
Every day seems to bring a new existential risk to British farming. Losing a farm is not like losing any other business. It can't come back. That's why the lack of urgency from the government, the lack of attention to detail, the lack of long-term planning, it's not on. You deserve better than that.
It seems hardly any time at all ago that Britain was cleaved apart and driven apart by riots throughout the summer as a result, to some degree, of the murder of 3 schoolgirls in Southport, also in the north of England. This led to disarray, disruption. It also led to a lot of people being arrested for social media posts. Of course, you're familiar with those stories. It's those stories in particular that lead us to believe that the UK has fallen, is under the control of some banal cabal. They're simultaneously sinister and tedious, dreadfully boring. It's almost like they bore you into submission with their ditchwater, dull rhetoric. You can't pay close attention to people that are so dingy and nasal and whining and boring, but you gotta pay attention because they are corrupt and hypocritical and maybe even bearers of some terrible false light. Second chart, UK is lost. No, it isn't lost, because the people of Britain are powerful people with strong tribal identity, strong identification with their land and their myth. And even if there has to be radical changes, new political movements, even if there has to be uprisings, even if it has to include never before seen measures, I see a Britain where people stand together in opposition to this corrupt government, rejecting the treachery and deceit of those that they have elected, whose wages they pay, who they watch on a daily basis lie to them. The people of UK are vivacious, vital people. Yeah, we're kind of polite, timid, mild. Oh, sorry, did I stand on your foot? Oh, I'm so sorry. Did I breathe a bit of your breath up there? Oh, I do apologise. But we are also a warlike people when abused. And I believe, and let me know if you agree with this, that this is a point where we're in Stockholm Syndrome Central when it comes to the UK government under Starmer. Here he is attempting to continue to claim that the UK riots were as a result of far-right protests instead of other causes, and even the legacy media has been forced to acknowledge that now. Have a look.
Sky News has, for the first time, uncovered and mapped the networks on Telegram, the encrypted messaging app where the flames were fanned and the riots were organised. We've been working with Pros, an open-source intelligence startup which has a deep penetration of far-right and conspiracist networks on Telegram, to find out who is behind the messaging.
One interesting thing we can see here, especially considering this is the first day, is that the source of most of the information that people are talking about on Telegram isn't British English language communities.
And the most widely shared content on Telegram during the initial 3 days of the unrest was primarily authored by non-domestic accounts from the USA and Europe.
Another false flag event? Does it look like that to you? Another example of insurgents and insurrection manipulated by deep state forces, by the establishment themselves, creating division and chaos among ordinary people? Will new leaders emerge? Will new opposition emerge? Or will we have to wait for the intervention of Donald Trump? I can't even believe I'm saying this, and I don't yet, but some are saying that the Trump administration will demand that Keir Starmer revokes hate speech laws. Trump fighting for Britain. Let me know what you think about that in the comments and chat. Do we need a new Anglophonic agreement with the United States of America when it comes to matters of justice? Is this UK government almost acting without a mandate now? Giddily arresting people seemingly arbitrarily. Free speech out the window, perhaps because it was never constitutional. What are we going to do in that crazy nation where they are on every level, it seems, attempting to break down and dismantle every aspect aspect of cultural and social life, whether it's impoverishing the farmers, whether it's refusing to investigate crimes that seem extraordinarily significant, widespread, epidemic, rape gangs, seems like the sort of thing that should be investigated, whether or not it goes as deep as Parliament itself. It seems that there's so much room for inquiry, and yet these inquiries aren't taking place. One thing's happened in the UK, though, about which many people want to talk, and indeed it's one of the main topics of our show today, is a court has announced that there are going to be just 2 genders. We'll be looking at that subject in significant detail after this message from one of our partners. Tax day has passed. You're in trouble. The government wants your money. Oh no, half of the time you're working, almost, it's for the government. Whatever crazy country you're in. This is Tax Network USA, who will help you by helping you navigate the complexity of your tax affairs. Do you know that the IRS, they're breathing down your neck, they're clammy-handed, they're all over you? If the IRS had a diddy party, who knows what the baby oil would stink of? Tax Network USA are to help you get out of that diddy party and back to freedom. With over 5,000 new tax liens filed daily and tools like property seizures, bank levies, wage garnishments, the IRS are applying pressure at levels we haven't seen in years. Increased administrative scrutiny means collections are moving fast. They are ramping up enforcement. If you wait, it will only get worse for yourself, like eczema, warts, acne, I don't know, but something that you should tend to immediately. Toenails? Are you a self-employed business owner? Yeah. Even if your books are a mess, they've got it covered. Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track fast. Also, if you're that lady that had a chimpanzee for a pet, but then the chimpanzee turned against her, they'll help you. Not with a chimp. That's your problem. You shouldn't have tried to have a chimp as a pet. But your taxes, they're going to be fine. Tax Network USA. It's not too late to regain control. Your consultation is completely free. And acting now can stop penalties, threatening letters, lies, and surprise levies before they escalate. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/brand. So, call the number on the screen now or click the link to take advantage of this. Let's face it, necessary. It's not a special offer. You've got to pay taxes. Sort it out. Okay, if you're watching us on X or YouTube, ultimately you've got to join us over on Rumble, our sweet home, and also the home of free speech. Many people are saying, certainly they're saying it on Rumble in ways they wouldn't be able to say it elsewhere. Let's have a look at today's main story. It's that a UK Supreme Court has said that trans women are not legally women under the Equality Act. Let me know what you think about that in the comments and chat. Is that plain old common sense, or is that a transgression against a vulnerable minority? Let me know. The Supreme Court in Britain ruled on Wednesday that trans women do not fall within the legal definition of women under the country's equality legislation. The landmark judgment, which said that the legal definition of a woman is based on biological sex, is a blow to campaigners for transgender rights. It could have far-reaching consequences for how the law is applied in Britain to some single-sex services like domestic violence shelters, as well as to equal pay claims and maternity policies. What's interesting about this piece of analysis is you can already see the biases. Because biological sex, if you're going to have biology as a discipline and as a subject, if you're going to use science as an orthodoxy, for example, in the way that it was used during the pandemic, do you remember how we were told to follow the science? Do you remember that? Do you remember that we were meant to put aside ideological beliefs like, what about our freedom to move around? No, put that aside because the science says that we have to keep still and stay in our home to stop these pathogens. And then we found out, hold on a minute, they're not telling the bleeding truth. So check this out. The subject it points out are transgender rights, okay, like minority groups are potentially vulnerable amidst heterogeny because they could be washed aside. Their rights could be lost. Look at this. It could have far-reaching consequences for how the laws applied in Britain to some single-sex services like domestic violence shelters. It draws your attention, this piece of analysis, straight away to circumstances where you would want, say if like in this hypothetical situation being conjured up by the New York Times, there's a trans woman is being beaten up and she's being denied access to a single-sex domestic violence shelter. Why would you bring up something so highly particular? Trans issues are ultimately human rights issues. That I agree with. All human beings have rights because we are made in the image of God. If you are sort of extremely devout and living a very devout life yourself, you might say, well, then how can you tamper with and tinker with the biological realities as endowed by the Creator? And I would say probably the principle of non-judgment and the principle of love must take precedent in any situation where you're not dealing with yourself personally, when you're dealing with other people. But if you have to conjure up in order to get a moral argument together, an even more intricate and granular example of a trans woman who's being domestically abused, being denied access to a single-sex domestic shelter, it seems like is a pretty niche issue. And at the level of law, it seems more important and significant that biological categories continue to be observed, I would say. Let me know what you think in the comments and chat. Then equal pay claims and maternity policies. I don't know how it can affect maternity policies because you cannot believe your way into a uterus. It follows a years-long legal battle that began in Scotland over whether trans women can be regarded as female under Britain's 2010 Equality Act, which aims to prevent discrimination. And it comes amid intense and at times bitter public debate over the intersection of transgender rights and women's rights. Announcing the decision on Wednesday, the Deputy President of the Court, Lord Hodge, said, "The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to biological women and biological sex." So, in a sense, it's quite a particular judgment about a very particular subject. But doesn't it point to the fact that we are morally lost and morally bewildered? How has this bewilderment being created? From what principles have we strayed, and what input have we accepted that's generated this crisis of understanding and faith? Let's get into it, because at some point you have to accept and respect the rights of feminists, and at some point you have to consider that all human life is sacred. If you start to query those ideas, start to pick them apart and pull them apart because you don't really believe in anything, and that you can nominate any ideology, that you can decorate a pantheon with deities of your own choosing, it's very, very difficult to find a constellation of moral principles by which to guide your ship. And I think that what's happening now is that we are in a total ethical and moral crisis. Some people are returning to a straightforward faith in God. Other people are delving yet more deeply into the dark, turgid terms of a set of curiously rational, but also berserk conjecture that the modern culture is creating. Let's have a look now at some women celebrating this victory, and let's look at what it indicates to us about the kind of loss of moral certainty. I only need the video.
We were in a really difficult place in Scotland then. We thought we were going to see rights for women rolled back, and today the judges have said what we always believed to be the case, that women are protected by their biological sex, that sex is real, and that women can now feel safe that services and spaces designated for women are for women, and we are enormously grateful to the Supreme Court for this ruling. Reality, we are standing side by side.
It's interesting, but you can see how that could even become a hysterical reverence for a type of temporary false idol, because ultimately aren't all of us called to find allegiance between ourselves and between the sexes? And why the continual repositioning of men and women as adversaries rather than the ultimate allies, the supreme creation? Let's have a look at the ruling in more detail.
The central question on this appeal is the meaning of the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010. Do those terms refer to biological women or biological sex? Or is a woman to be interpreted as extending to a trans woman with a gender recognition certificate? By that I mean a person born male who now possesses a gender recognition certificate amending her gender to female, and sex to be interpreted as including what I will refer to as certificated sex.
Gosh, isn't it odd that we have to have people from, I'm guessing, some kind of Etonian background ruminating, espousing, proselytizing, and even legislating on something that not that long ago would have been considered a niche issue? For me, this is an indicator that the culture is kind of collapsing in on itself. On one hand, you've got yourself people being jailed for stuff they're saying on Facebook. On the other hand, you've got like complex legal rulings about whether or not there's such a thing as a biological woman and who might be protected in a single-sex domestic shelter if they were being abused by their partner. So it's a really weird way to run a world.
Let's get some reaction. As I say, there was a hall full of people here, but let's get some reaction from the campaign group for Women Scotland who started all this. Trina Budge, thank you very much indeed for your time on Sky News.
My pleasure.
The judge says this is not a victory for either side and it needs to be sober. What's your take on this?
Oh, it's absolutely a victory for women's rights. This case was always about women, never about trans rights, who, as Judge Hodge said, that they are fully protected in law still. But now we have clarity over what a woman means in law.
And this has been a long road to here, hasn't it? What does this change as of today? Because there's lots of legal talk, there's lots of discussion around what actually changes here as a result of this. In your view, what does that mean?
It means there's absolute clarity in law regarding what a woman is. We know for sure now that we are referring to the biological sex class of women, and that when we see a women-only space, it means...
This will be seen as a victory in the ongoing culture war, but the culture war is a war that's being fought on a battlefield that's already owned by dark forces. While we continue to divide over subjects like this, I would suspect and suggest that true power merrily manoeuvres around, manipulating minds and controlling us in ways that are most appealing and appeasing to their general and ongoing agenda. This might be seen as a victory if you're sort of celebrating, yeah, women's spaces remain safe, or you're celebrating, yeah, that trans issue was ludicrous and ridiculous. But actually though, what is going to change in your life, in your ability to live a happy and connected life? What's going to happen next time you try to eat food or be self-sufficient or move around? I reckon that this is part of the encircling and enclosing global argument that benefits people in power, whichever side are won. If they'd have gone, trans people should be able to go into single-sex domestic shelters or receive equal pay under the law, or be considered biological women. I don't see how that would advance the lives of ordinary people one bit, because the government oughtn't be trusted with ideological matters. Ideology has to come from a supreme force. Principles have to come from a supreme force. If we know one thing for sure about the UK government, or in the broadest possible terms, the United States government, or in broader terms still, the sets of institutions and powers, both government and private, that ultimately determine the flow of the direction of power and resources in the world, is that they've become hopelessly corrupted. And while we stand in bafflement, waving flags or advocating for one particular single issue that might mean something to you because something happened to you one day at school or you read a book once, the truth is this: you are being herded by a shepherd that is not the true shepherd. You are being illuminated by a light that is a false light. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and the chat? We are going to leave YouTube right now, and we've got so much more to talk about. We're going to be talking about insider trading and the claims made by the Democrats that Trump and his allies exploited the temporary fluctuations in the stock market, or ongoing fluctuations in the stock market, in order to benefit Nancy Pelosi. Anyone. We're going to be talking about the Meta trial. We got so much more to discuss, but in order to see those discussions, join us over on Rumble, where the likes of Orion Spectrum and Athabasca are chatting away even now, freely and openly. Click that link, get on over, come join us here. Here's a quick message from one of our partners before we leap into some topics that are going to bend your bones. Do you want 100 grand? Do you believe in the